Today we will be talking about the effect that individuals using the internet have had on GDP per capita yearly growth. Initially, we thought that as more individuals use the internet, the GDP would be positively affected. We can see from the graph that there are many countries with fluctuating GDP per capita growth. In this video, we will be discussing what affected the United States, China, and Lithuania the most since they began using the internet.
With most countries adopting the internet around 1989, the US did not start using the internet broadly until 1990. There were many up-and-coming businesses trying to get a piece of the internet. However, in March 2000, the internet bubble burst into what we know now as the dot-com bubble. The NASDAQ, one of the biggest collection of tech companies on the stock market, was valued at $6.7 trillion. After the burst, a month later, $1 trillion was gone from the stock market. As we can see from the graph in 2008, there is another drop in GDP. This is from the housing crisis of 2008, which hit countries around the world. What affected the US at this time were people were refinancing their houses, taking advantage of the lowest interest rates. However, the banks also started doing riskier mortgage lending, which led to government loans, companies such as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac consolidating the loans and selling them to asset management corporations like BlackRock to bail out the government.
In 1989, China's government made a choice to combine political repression, a market economy, and globalization. Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping started opening up China to the world and reforming the economy in the late 70s and early 80s. However, Chinese Communist Party was apprehensive about the types of change in terms of both economics and politics. Then came the year 1989. The Communist Party faced a crisis in legitimacy. They decided right then that they would use all possible resources to maintain a stable society and economic reform. In the following years, they embraced market capitalism, free trade, and globalization. The leaders then endorsed for a socialist market economy. This led to the 1989 choice, which was the combination of political repression with attributes of a market economy and embracing the concept of globalization. It turned out that the 1989 choice, while originally controversial, led to the greatest escape from poverty in history. In 1989, China's population was the largest in the world, but the country's GDP was only the 9th largest in the world. Today, China's economy is 24 times larger than it was in 1989, and their per-person GDP is more than $6,000, while it was $307 in 1989.
During the 90s, Lithuania was going through an economic reform. Stage one of this reform was the privatization of state-owned assets. Citizens would get vouchers, and this increased the trade in the country. Between 1998 and 2000, the private sector GDP helped grow Lithuania's economy by 8.28%. In 2001 to 2004, Lithuania joined the WTO, or the World Trade Organization. However, because of this, Lithuania had a rapid economic growth, which caused an overcorrection. Continuing just like everywhere else, the biggest GDP drop was in 2008 during the world housing crisis. Naturally, with an overcorrection from 2006, an overcorrection was needed to fix an overcorrection. This led to a rapid growth in GDP per capita in 2010. We found through our research that the amount of users on the internet does indeed have a small effect on the yearly growth of GDP per capita.